What was weird about Antarctica?
There's nothing there.
Why do we have these weird structures that no one can really explain? And when you think about the fact that there's so much evidence that we were hit by comets, that we were hit by large objects. Like, I didn't know about that enormous crater that's in Antarctica.
Let's start with something that sounds like science fiction but is absolutely real. Buried beneath East Antarctica's vast ice sheet lies the Gamburtsev subglacial mountains, an ancient and largely unexplored mountain range that has become a focal point of scientific discovery. We're talking about peaks that rise over 3,000 meters high, completely hidden under miles of ice, stretching across 1,200 kilometers of the most remote landscape on Earth. Here's where it gets interesting. These mountains were first hypothesized back in the 1950s, but it wasn't until the early 2000s that we had the technology actually to see what was down there. And guess who played a pivotal role in mapping this hidden world? China. Using advanced radar and seismic tomography, some Chinese scientists from their Kunlun station conducted deep ice radar surveys and aerial reconnaissance that revealed the full extent of this buried mountain range. The Gamburtsev Mountains aren't just a geological curiosity, they're a ticking time bomb for global sea levels. These mountains, with their steep ridges and complex fault lines, control how ice flows across the entire continent. It is the hidden skeleton that determines whether Antarctica's ice stays put or slides into the ocean. And recent research suggests that if the underlying rock shifts or softens due to warming, glaciers could slide faster than we ever imagined, potentially leading to rapid ice sheet collapse and catastrophic sea level rise. The geological history of these mountains is equally mind-blowing. They were once part of the supercontinent Rodinia, then reshaped during the Permian period over 250 million years ago. Chinese scientific missions have provided 3D reconstructions of this subglacial terrain that revealed evidence of temperate ecosystems and active river systems that existed before glaciation. Imagine that. Where there's now nothing but ice, there were once flowing rivers and thriving ecosystems. But here's what keeps climate scientists awake at night. As one of the largest repositories of ice on Earth, Antarctica's east ice sheet is particularly vulnerable to destabilization, and the Gamburtsev region's rugged topography plays a key role in ice flow dynamics. If these mountains destabilize the ice above them, we're not talking about gradual change over centuries. We're talking about meter-level sea rise that could happen within decades, putting entire coastlines under threat. Now, this next breakthrough goes far deeper than hidden mountains. In a place so remote and punishing it might as well be another planet, China drilled into the Antarctic ice and pulled out Earth's most detailed climate time capsule. These frozen cores didn't just record the past, they warned us about the future. Dome Argus, the highest and coldest point on the continent, the ice here isn't just ancient. It's pure, undisturbed, and loaded with secrets that could change how we understand climate change, global warming, and even the fate of coastal cities around the world. Back in 2004, China kicked off its most ambitious climate research project to date. The goal? Drill deep into the Antarctic ice sheet at Dome Argus and retrieve cores that hadn't seen the light of day in thousands of years. Sounds simple enough, right? Not even close. Dome A is one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. We're talking temperatures that drop to minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit, howling winds, and an elevation so high it messes with your oxygen levels. Despite the odds, China's team pulled it off. Their first big win came with a 108-meter ice core, essentially a frozen tube layered like the rings of a tree, but with every inch telling a story about Earth's atmosphere at that specific time in history. By 2009, they pushed even deeper, extracting an 800-meter core. Then, in 2019, they made their most astonishing breakthrough, a continuous ice and subglacial core drilled through 200 meters of solid ice using equipment they built themselves. Let that sink in for a second. Most countries rely on imported, specialized equipment for this kind of deep ice drilling, but China doesn't. They engineered their own technology, designed from scratch to survive Antarctica's brutal conditions. This wasn't just about science. It was a bold statement that said, we're not just participating in global research anymore. We're leading it. So what's the big deal with these ice cores? Everything. Ice cores are the most reliable records of Earth's climate history that we have. Each layer traps microscopic clues, dust particles, trapped gases like carbon dioxide and methane, even fallout from ancient volcanic eruptions. It's like slicing through a multi-thousand-year-old cake and finding receipts from every decade baked inside. China's cores gave scientists clear evidence of how Earth's atmosphere has evolved, confirming major swings in temperature and greenhouse gas levels long before industrial activity. But here's where it gets scary. Those shifts happened over thousands of years. Today we're seeing similar changes unfold in mere decades. That pace isn't just fast. It's alarming, and the ice confirms it. If you think this video deserves more attention, hit the hype button right below after pressing like. Each hype helps this video get recommended more often. Now, you might be wondering what penguin droppings have to do with terrifying scientific discoveries. Trust me, this gets wild. China's deep involvement in Antarctic research has gone far beyond symbolic flags and exploration missions. It has redefined how the world approaches climate science and polar research. From 30,000-year-old penguin droppings to miles-deep ice cores and buried mountain ranges, their findings haven't just filled textbooks. They've shaken global climate models and altered international environmental strategies. Let's start with the penguin population records, because yes, penguins are more than just cute waddlers in tuxedos. The study led by Chinese scientist Sun Liguang tracked penguin colony changes over thousands of years, using preserved droppings as biological timestamps. These shifts were found to align with sea ice movement and ocean temperatures, providing direct proof that warming seas were reshaping ecosystems long before we had satellites to monitor them. This wasn't just a strange zoological curiosity. It was a biological alarm bell ringing across the Southern Ocean. Through this research, China gave the world a biological model for tracking climate-induced ecosystem shifts. It's not an exaggeration to say that penguin poop became a crucial climate warning system. But the real spine chiller came from those ice cores from Doma that we talked about earlier. China drilled these in 2004, 2009, and 2019, extracting frozen cylinders that served as climate time capsules. Inside were trapped air bubbles from hundreds of thousands of years ago, literal samples of Earth's prehistoric atmosphere. The data revealed abrupt climate swings, CO2 spikes, and ocean changes similar to today's trends. One set of subglacial cores even showed how melting ice interacts with the ground beneath it, a data that's crucial for understanding what happens if massive ice sheets like those in West Antarctica collapse. We're not talking theoretical science fiction here. We're talking meter-level sea rise, entire coastlines under threat. That's not just an academic concern. That's global survival at stake. And then there's the hidden skeleton of the continent, the Gamburtsev Mountains we discussed. Buried beneath miles of ice, this ghost mountain range was mapped out using seismic and radar technology. Why does that matter? Because those mountains control how ice moves across the continent. If the underlying rock shifts or softens due to warming, glaciers could slide faster, accelerating sea level rise. It's like discovering that your basement is cracking while your house is already flooding. To top it all off, China hasn't just made a few big discoveries and called it a day. Through the 2012 Chinar Initiative, they set long-term goals to monitor ice sheet behavior, ocean circulation, and polar ecosystems. Their newly built inexpressible island station near the Ross Sea is a modern scientific fortress armed with tools for satellite monitoring, biological sampling, and atmospheric tracking. Unlike shady cover-ups, China's work is out in the open, published in major scientific journals, shared with international partners, and made available for global climate assessments. This is where myth and reality split paths. While some have questioned what's really going on in Antarctica, the truth is that the scariest stuff is already in plain sight and backed by science. And before we continue unfolding this fascinating discovery, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Don't forget to share it with your friends too. It helps the channel out, and I'm excited to continue bringing you more awesome content. Most people would be surprised to know that, as recently as 1980, the People's Republic of China had no official presence on the southern continent. Zero. They lacked ice-capable ships, overland transport vehicles, trained polar scientists, and even basic infrastructure for cold weather operations. Yet by 1985, China had defied all expectations and established a fully operational, year-round research station, Great Wall Station, that within just 5 years of beginning its polar campaign. This meteoric rise was sparked by a pivotal diplomatic gesture. In 1980, Australia, a veteran of Antarctic science under the Antarctic Treaty System, invited Chinese researchers to join one of its expeditions. At that time, China had only recently emerged from the Cultural Revolution, and its scientific institutions were still recovering from a decade of disruption. But Beijing's leadership recognized the strategic significance of Antarctica, and so do other great powers on our planet. Antarctica is not just a frontier of climate and geological research. It is also a geopolitical chessboard on which future influence would be measured. China knows that, and so do its competitors. China launched its first independently organized Antarctic expedition in November 1984. The team, consisting of 591 members, departed Shanghai aboard the Jiangyang Hongten, a converted cargo vessel that had been retrofitted with limited scientific equipment and reinforced hull plating. The ship traversed more than 18,500 nautical miles before reaching King George Island in the South Shetland archipelago. There, under brutal wind and snow conditions, the team began construction of what would become the Great Wall Station. Remarkably, the station was completed in just 40 days, by February 20th, 1985, and became China's first permanent research base in Antarctica. Initially housing 25 researchers and capable of supporting up to 60 during the summer season, Great Wall Station focused on atmospheric sciences, glaciology, oceanography, and biodiversity studies. But China did not stop there. Within 4 years, it had taken another massive step. In 1989, it inaugurated Zhongshan Station in East Antarctica's Larsman Hills region, over 3,000 kilometers from its first outpost. This station was significantly more remote and presented formidable logistical challenges, as it required traversing vast ice shelves and harsh terrain without the support of nearby international facilities. Zhongshan Station served a dual purpose. First, it became China's main portal into East Antarctica, offering access to inland ice dome regions critical for paleoclimate research through deep ice core drilling. Second, it was a strategic hub from which China could launch inland expeditions into the unclaimed and least accessible parts of Antarctica, areas such as Dome Ahia, where the polar ice sheet reaches its thickest and most stable configuration. China's ambitions continued to accelerate. In 2009, the Chinese National Antarctic Research Expedition established a third station, Kunlun Station, located at Dome. This is the highest point on the East Antarctic ice sheet at an elevation of over 4,000 meters. This inland facility, operational only during the summer months due to its extreme cold, with temperatures plummeting to minus 80 degrees Celsius, is uniquely positioned for deep ice core drilling and atmospheric observations. Now, here's where things get both interesting and concerning. When China joined the Antarctic Treaty System in 1983, it was a calculated geopolitical move. The treaty, signed in 1959 and in force since 1961, set Antarctica aside for peaceful purposes, scientific collaboration, and a ban on military activity or sovereignty claims. For China, just emerging from isolation after decades of inward policy and the Cultural Revolution, accession offered a low-cost entry into a prestigious global forum. Only 2 years later, in 1985, it achieved consultative party status by demonstrating substantial research activity through its independently built Great Wall Station. This gave China full voting rights in annual consultative meetings, allowing it to directly influence governance of a continent covering 14 million square kilometers, holding an estimated 70% of Earth's freshwater reserves. Such rapid integration unsettled established polar powers. Consultative status is not symbolic. It shapes environmental rules, tourism oversight, and scientific cooperation. Today, only 29 of 56 Antarctic Treaty members hold this privilege. China's swift rise placed it alongside the US, Russia, the UK, Australia, and Norway, nations with long Antarctic legacies. Western observers began asking, was China committed to science or using research as cover for strategic ambitions? The context deepens with Antarctica's theorized mineral wealth, rare earths, methane hydrates, iron ore, possibly oil and gas. The 1991 Madrid Protocol bans mineral exploitation until at least 2048, but satellite surveys and seismic studies suggest major resources. Chinese expeditions from Zhongshan and Kunlun stations have focused on geological surveys, subglacial lakes, and magnetic anomalies. While framed as scientific, these resemble resource assessments. Since 2010, the State Oceanic Administration has compiled extensive geological data, crustal structures, and bedrock profiles. Unlike many Western programs, China has been less transparent. Much of its Antarctic research appears only in Chinese-language journals, limiting global scrutiny. Seismic data from Dome A, one of the best ice core drilling sites, remains incomplete. Collaboration is also limited. Foreign scientists are rarely hosted long-term at inland stations like Kunlun or Taishan. This opacity has fueled speculation in strategic circles. A 2014 Australian Strategic Policy Institute report argued China's activities serve a broader strategic posture. A 2018 Center for Strategic and International Studies study echoed this, noting China's expanding logistics, two state-owned icebreakers, use of military-grade aircraft, semi-permanent inland depots, all infrastructure consistent with long-term presence. By 2019, Chinese state media called Antarctica humanity's shared wealth and emphasized China's right to its sustainable use, language many analysts saw as signaling interest in post-2048 resource access. At the same time, its public engagement lags behind Western norms. The U.S. NSF runs live webcams from McMurdo. The British Antarctic Survey offers virtual tours and real-time data from Rothera. In contrast, China's Great Wall and Kunlun stations provide only sparse, state-filtered updates. In 2021, a Polar Research Institute academic described Antarctic data as strategic capital that should not be freely shared. With the 2048 Madrid Protocol review approaching, China's choices in the next 2 decades may shape not only its own polar legacy but the fate of the world's last unowned landmass. Now, you might be wondering why Joe Rogan shows up in a discussion about Chinese Antarctic research. He's not obsessed with the continent, but he returns to it often, drawn to its mix of science, danger, and mystery. Few platforms spotlight the edge of human exploration like the Joe Rogan Experience. Antarctica, with its icy enigmas and buried secrets, fits Rogan's style of high-stakes speculation. His conversations don't just entertain, they echo themes in China's Antarctic activities: bold discovery, unexplained phenomena, and the uneasy sense that something doesn't quite add up. Across several episodes, Rogan has highlighted Antarctica as a collision point between hard science and ancient legend. Whether it's a Navy SEAL describing lethal terrain or a historian speculating about pre-Ice Age civilizations, the continent becomes more than frozen wasteland. It's a stage for human survival, ignorance, and sometimes secrecy. One standout came in episode 1429 with Colin O'Brady, who crossed Antarctica alone and unassisted. For 54 days, he dragged a 400-pound sled across 932 miles of ice. Rogan was riveted, not only by the physical feat but by the psychological toll. You're literally on the edge of the world, man. And the silence, that would drive me nuts. O'Brady recalled moments where the ice seemed alive, a haunting atmosphere that parallels what Chinese researchers endure at Dome A, where science itself becomes a test of endurance. In episode 1996, Rogan hosted Andy Stumpf, a former Navy SEAL with direct experience in extreme environments. Stumpf described crevasses vast enough to swallow tanks, brutal UV exposure from the ozone hole, and logistics so punishing that mistakes mean disappearance, not injury. Rogan's takeaway: it's like the Earth doesn't want us there. That sentiment mirrors the reality for Chinese expeditions extracting climate data under equally hostile conditions. Episode 2136 brought Graham Hancock and Flint Dibble into the mix. Hancock raised the infamous Piri Reis map, suggesting it depicted Antarctica's coast centuries before modern discovery, possibly before its ice cover. Rogan wasn't sold but leaned into the idea, so people might have known about this place before it was frozen. That speculation resonates with China's geological finds, like the Gamburtsev Mountains, hidden valleys hinting at a prehistoric Antarctica buried beneath ice. While mainstream science dismisses Hancock's bolder claims, the curiosity he stirs parallels intrigue around China's calculated exploration. Rogan tapped that again with comedian Sam Tripoli in a conversation about Operation High Jump, the massive 1946 U.S. military mission to Antarctica involving nearly 5,000 men and dozens of ships. Officially, it was training and research, but conspiracy theories frame it as something darker: UFO encounters, secret Nazi bases, and missing personnel. Rogan probed, why send that many people just to test equipment? His skepticism underscores a broader point. When governments pour resources into an uninhabited ice desert, there's usually more than meets the eye. Taken together, these episodes show Rogan's instinct to question everything. And to him, Antarctica is like a locked door sealed by the 1959 treaty, off limits to nearly all of humanity. Locked doors invite curiosity, and Rogan wants to know what's behind this one. China's activities, whether studying microbes, tracking penguin colonies, or probing ancient tectonic structures, fit neatly into that narrative. They raise the same question Rogan keeps circling back to: what is really going on in Antarctica? So what does this all mean for the rest of us? The discoveries that Chinese scientists have made in Antarctica aren't just academic curiosities or geopolitical chess moves. They're urgent warnings about the future of our planet, and the timeline for action is shorter than most people realize. The ice is melting, the climate is shifting, and the timeline for action is shorter than we thought. That's not speculation. That's science. And it's coming from the bottom of the world, where Chinese scientists are quite literally drilling into the future of our planet. If you've made it this far, it means you really care. Don't just stop at the like button, hit that hype too. It only takes a few seconds, but it helps this video reach way more people. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel because there's a lot more to uncover about the discoveries that are reshaping our understanding of Earth itself. Thanks for being with us. Leave a comment, like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button for more exciting videos. See you next time.